Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha on 44 different platforms around the world. And my name is Agi, and I'm the host here. I'm all by myself tonight. My co host is busy, but I have something very special for you here because I have a very special lady with me. And before I go to the guest, I want to say a few things about Broadcast Team Alpha. We are on 44 different platforms, but we're also on Conscious Awakening Network. And of course, you might be watching it there. So, and also on a lot of other places. And now we are we're having some challenges in the United States and every other country on earth. And challenges are one thing, and we need to understand them and analyze them, and then we can do something. Otherwise, it may not work. And I have Rima Laibow with us to talk about that. She is a frontline doctor. She is everywhere on the big shows out there being interviewed. And she has been a psychiatrist and an MD for 55 years. But there's something special about that because she has not written one prescription because she figured it out by the time she got to graduate that those prescriptions, that is most all poisons. How can you get healthy when you eat and drink poison? Well, that's a good question. So if any of you can come up with the answer to that, I am all ears. But she also does telemedicine. She can tell you how you can become healthy by not ingesting poison. So I know there's a lot more that should be said, but welcome to the show, Rima.
Thank you so much, Augie. I'm really delighted to be here. If anybody is interested in finding out more about how to arrange a consultation, they can send me an email, releyes3 at gmail.com with the word consult as the subject, and then we can go from there. Um, Actually, I figured it out in my very
Uh,
first.
First of all, let's mention your website up front because a lot of people like to scan the website while they're listening. So that's
Excellent.
one of them is preventgenocide2030.org. And
PreventGenocide2030.org. Now, when you look for it, and it's a very important website, I have to say, when you look for it, you may find it banned and blocked by the search engines. You may have to go onto a different search engine or a different browser to find it because they don't want you to know about what's here. What
Mhm.
kind of genocide are we talking about? We're talking about Agenda 2030, thus preventgenocide2030.org. The United Nations is committed to and was founded to bring about a profound depopulation and an enslavement from the DNA outward of every one of the few people who are left. And they say that. They talk about the 15-minute cities, the 10-minute cities, the 5-minute cities, biodigital um, convergence, transhumanism, the Internet of Bodies. They're not ashamed of it. They're quite clear about it. They talk about in the World Health Organization's One Health agenda, which is the law in the United States and Canada and every other country in the world at this point, in spite of the fact that we are allegedly no longer members of WHO. They talk about the fact that we're going to get rid of all agriculture. We're not going to produce plants. We're not going to produce animal food. You're going to eat Z bugs and you're going to like it. Why are you going to like it? Because your water and your bug sludge food and lab created meat will be laced with chemicals that control your mind and frequencies that control every aspect of your body. They're quite clear about it. We normal people say, nah, that's just conspiracy theory. No, it's a conspiracy. And they've been working on it since before the United Nations was founded. What they didn't have was the science. They had to wait until the science was ready to spring the trap completely. Well, there are a lot of aspects to that trap, and a lot of people are concerned about child trafficking, which is very bad, about the sexualization of children through comprehensive sexuality education, which is very bad, about the digital gulag and cryptocurrency as money, which can be turned off if your social credit score isn't appropriate, which is very bad. And they're concerned about the killer so-called vaccines, the mRNA platform vaccines, which are very bad. And they're concerned about they're concerned about 5G, which
Yeah.
is a weapon, not a communication system, which is very bad. But all of these and many more are tentacles that connect back to the central beast. What's the central beast? The
Yeah.
central beast is the United Nations, which is the operational arm, the death machine of what I call the imperium behind it, the controllers who have decided that this is the way the world should be organized. And they use this peace and love and kumbaya um, uh,
It's a basic
organization.
it's a basic communistic organization.
Absolutely. So if you go to Prevent Genocide 2030, you'll see not only information, and there's a lot of information. Each of these campaigns and links at the top has a good deal of depth behind it. But you'll also see some areas where you can take action. One of the actions you can take is to keep Casey Means, who bursts suddenly on the scene on Tucker Carlson, and then she's everywhere on Joe Rogan and so on, an unlicensed physician who deceptively claims to be a functional medicine physician. She doesn't have a license. She can't treat patients. She is a transhumanist. She is a biosurveillance cheerleader, and
Yeah.
you don't want her as Surgeon General of the United States. You certainly don't. But Congress the Senate specifically, has to confirm her. So here is a way for you to fill this in. I'm going to fill this in and show you how it works. I'm filling in my data, and you can tell the members of Congress with a letter that you can edit and you can send. These are my representatives in the Senate. Do
Yeah.
not confirm this woman as our Surgeon General, for God's sakes. You can
Hmm.
also tell Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to not only do what he's supposed to be doing about vaccines and so forth, which he's not really doing, but you can tell him to, now that we are supposedly no longer in WHO, to get all of the control mechanisms of WHO out of HHS.
Yeah.
HHS is the second largest agency in the United States, twice as large in manpower and twice as large in budget as the US Department of Defense. And it
Really?
is in, yes, and it is entirely permeated by WHO, UNESCO, UNICEF regulations, control, procedures, protocols, partnerships. Now, if we don't get those out of the agency that is supposedly regulating our health and our food, if we don't get those out, what good does Donald Trump's supposed withdrawal of the United States on day one of his presidency really do? Nothing. So here is a way to write to Kennedy and tell him, extract all of the control mechanisms of WHO from the second largest agency in the United States and do it now. So I've just submitted that letter. That's pretty easy. You can also, and this is unbelievably important, you can also fill in your information and write to your members of Congress and tell them to pass the Disengaging Entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act of 2025. This act says UN out of the US, all headquarters, all agencies out of the US. That is essential for human survival. And you can also call them. You can do a whole lot of things. I'm just, in this case, just going to send the letter. I just sent it. And here's a little script that you could read if you're making a call to their offices. You get the numbers here. It's
Okay.
really important.
Yeah,
Why?
let me say something to the listeners right here. Now we are going through here. She is showing you how you can get involved and make a difference. And the reason that we're doing this now is because the time of knowing only is over. Now is the time of doing. We got to do something. Otherwise, this train we're on is going to run in the ditch.
You
So,
know, Augie, a lot of people, I'm going to stop sharing now. This is
yeah.
preventgenocide2030.org. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to share something with you. A lot of people, and I think you are one of them, talk about the fact that this is a spiritual warfare
Yeah.
event. And I was on a webinar with a very famous and worldwide listen to guru kind of person
Mhm.
2 days ago. And the wonderful people on the panel about child trafficking were talking about intentionality and spiritual recovery from child trafficking and abuse and so on. And they're all right, except for one thing. Just as we have opposable thumbs that allow us to do quite amazing things in the physical world that we couldn't do without our opposable thumbs, we have spiritual opposable thumbs. In order to bring the world into conformity with what we envision it to be, what we intend it to be, what our illumination tells us we can make it, we have to do something
Yeah.
in the real world. And the do something is to pick up your freedom mouse and write it. That's what preventgenocide2030.org is about. You have the power. The greatest lie that the globalists, the controlocrats, the destructigarchs,
Yeah.
the greatest lie that they've told us is that we are isolated, we are powerless, and we are insignificant. And the reason they tell us that lie is because we are the power source and they fear us
Yeah.
and they try to squash us and shadow ban us and kill us and eliminate our voice. Sayer G of Green Medicine. Good guy, doing great research, putting out great information for years. Sayer G, who is protected under the First Amendment and everything that he's written in the United States, is now under criminal indictment in the UK
Yeah.
because his non narrative supporting speech has been criminalized in the UK, although it was written in the United States, published in the United States, and protected by the First Amendment.
Yeah.
That is the United Nations at work. The United Nations is evil on every parameter and wants you dead or enslaved. But they've bamboozled a whole bunch of good men and women to do their job and to carry out their activities as if they were your friend. The United Nations is your enemy. It is the central beast. The child trafficking comes from the United Nations. The genocidal bioweapons comes from the United Nations. The digital currency and gulag comes from the United Nations. The global censorship comes from the United Nations. The destruction of agriculture and property rights and the corruption of children, all of it comes from this carefully orchestrated, beautifully funded, wrapped in cotton candy and kumbaya ribbon that is the United Nations. And unless and until we, the people, pick up our freedom mouses and raise our voices, we are voting with the destructocrats, the people who want us dead or enslaved, like Yuval Harari, like the World Economic Forum, like every globalist leader.
Yeah.
We have survival to assure, or we are voting with our passivity with the people who want us dead. I vote for life and humanity. And that means using your opposable thumbs and actually doing something in the real world, not just thinking Om, because that's only part of the deal.
Yeah, and I remember also reading that at the World Population Meeting, I think it was in Cairo, Egypt, in about 30 years ago, they decided that there was 800,000 people of population of Earth would be ideal, and we must go for that goal. And they said something about at any means.
And in fact, the whole climate change
Yeah,
nonsense, and it's utter nonsense. The entire climate change and carbon dioxide being a poisonous gas. No, no, carbon dioxide is the stuff of life. The entire narrative was created via Maurice Strong, a Canadian monster like Klaus Schwab, um, to control the belief system and the behavior and the population of people. It is a fraudulent lie that has been beautifully funded and brought forth in order to bring about the destruction of humanity, as everything else that's going on from that central beast organization. You don't fight the tentacles, you
yeah,
fight the central beast, and you kill the central beast. Now, when the United States supposedly withdrew from the WHO, the WHO immediately began collapsing because sadly, the United States is the beating heart of globalism.
yeah,
And the sad thing is that when Trump withdrew the United States from the WHO on day one of his presidency, he said, you know, all that pandemic preparedness and response stuff that is so enormously profitable and leads to total world domination, you know, all that good stuff. Well, we're not going to let foreign agencies do it. We're going to do it ourselves. He said, we're going to continue their programs
yeah.
and we're going to do it ourselves. Oops. So we're going to be the new, better WHO. And in fact, Kennedy and Milei of Argentina have said, you know what? Going to make a new, better, non tyrannical WHO.
Sure,
Well,
yeah, sure.
yeah, maybe. Let's start with getting WHO out of HHS, and then we'll see where we go from there. And that's what one of those action items that I've just shown you is about. Now, if 17 people or 170 or 1,700 people take any one of those actions, they're ineffective. If 1,700,000 or 3 million people take those actions, I
Yeah.
guarantee you we will get exactly what we are asking for. So, numbers matter. Size matters here in terms of the size of the response.
Yeah,
Political will is measured in numbers,
yeah.
it's a numbers game.
And another thing I want to say when you contact a politician, if you send an email, it has a certain value. If you call, it has more of a value,
Yes.
especially if a lot of you do, it clogs the system. They can't call out. So, but the best one at all, get the address and send a letter. A letter is worth something like, I think, 500 emails or something like that in their point of view.
Yes and no. If again, it's a numbers game. If
Yeah,
1,000 people send emails, what you're saying is absolutely true. If 3 million people send emails, then that equation is changed. And now it's the number of people
yeah,
who responded that counts. I know this because I have personally forced public policy at the national level and at the international level to shift 180 degrees by simply asking people to ride their freedom mouse. And when millions of people, not 27, millions of people in
yeah,
fact do that, what happens is we get what we want. In 2009, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, stood before the Congress of the United States and she said on September 15th, and we have her speech in the Federal Register, the FDA, that's the Fraud and Death Administration, has set up 90,000 immunization stations in the United States and has purchased $500 million worth of squalene to adjuvant the entire output, which we have purchased, of the 5 manufacturers of the swine flu vaccines. We don't have enough of uh, uh, the vaccine without the adjuvant. So we're going to extend it and we're going to admix a certain amount in every vaccination. We'll start with the people who want the swine flu vaccine, and then we will mandate every other person in the United States, every man, woman, and child, to receive it, whether they want it or not. Our scientists, she said, will not sign off on this, but we're doing it anyway. And I thought, odd. Why is she specifying the exact amount of squalene, which injected into people creates Gulf War syndrome? Not a good idea. Why is she specifying that? And why is she saying her scientists won't sign off on it? So I went digging on the internet. And what I discovered, Agi, was that the United States government held 2 patents. One was for the use of that precise amount of squalene mixed into a vaccine to create immune mediated irreversible female infertility. And the other was to use the same amount of squalene admixed into a vaccine to create immune mediated irreversible male sterility. So they were going to sterilize the entire population of the United States under a mandate of protecting us from swine flu in
Yeah, yeah.
2009. So I told people about it with exactly the kind of action item that I've just shown you on Prevent Genocide 2030. And in 11 days, 3.5 million people each clicked send. And on day 12, Kathleen Sebelius said, okay, we won't do that. And they dropped the entire program.
Wow.
That's us. That's us writing our freedom mouse. That's us realizing that each and every one of us is the power point. Collectively, we are their bosses, and they are afraid not of us, but they are afraid of losing control of the control.
Yeah,
Do I?
there's one more thing too, and that know that all of those people that write to them, they're gonna vote someday.
And that sort of kind of matters, but it doesn't matter all that much, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah?
As long as there are machines, we don't have free and fair elections in this country. So the machines are not, well, it turns out that there's something called the HAVA Act, the Help Americans Vote Act. And the HAVA Act says that every voting machine in the United States, in order to be certified as a legitimate voting machine, has to be certified by a particular kind of company. And that otherwise the votes cast in the machine cannot be used in any election, federal, state, or local. There's only one little hitch there, Augie. No such company exists anywhere in the world. Therefore, every voting machine in the United States is uncertified, and every vote cast by every voting machine in the United States has no legal meaning. But it's even better because, according to law, no voting machine can be capable of connecting to the internet.
Yeah.
In Maricopa County, where voting poll watchers were there to observe what was going on through the educational activity of affidavit mamas and their that wonderful group. What they discovered was that the machines, several of the machines, were not working. So they connected them to the internet. The people who were in charge of them connected them to the internet to run the diagnostic and fix it. Wait, those machines are supposed to be incapable of connecting to the internet.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Oh, oh. So what we're talking about is we have selections. We don't have elections.
Yeah,
However, the people who are selected and put in place or elected have one job, and that is to keep control of the control. And when we, the people, make it clear to them that they are losing control of the control
yeah. Here,
peacefully,
here's a
then
no
they give us what we want.
here's a novel for you. Wasn't it Mark Twain that said one time in a speech, if voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it.
Yeah, well, that's true, as a matter of fact. And it was also Mark Twain who said, when the Congress of the United States is in session, no man nor his property is safe.
Yes.
Um, So
Sharp guy.
Mark Twain understood very well. Mark Twain was also a pedophile. That's a different story. Anyway,
Now, you got on to the vaccine. Talk a little bit about why and also what's in it. Where, the chemtrails and everything, just talk a little bit about this. And also, I know there are people out there that was felt they were forced to have this stupid thing put into them. What can they do to save their life? Because the self-replicating protein, that means if you got one of them, after a while, you're going to have 2, 4, 16, 32, 64, 128, and there you go until the blood vessels clog. Then what? What can we
asking
do?
very, very important questions. First of all, nobody received a COVID-19 vaccine. What they received was a COVID-19 vaccine labeled
Yeah,
bioweapon. Bioweapons are not designed to be either safe or effective, which is why the federal agencies lied about them. As Robert F. Kennedy Jr., in an interview with Brett Weinstein, made it clear some time ago, Moderna and Pfizer did not develop what we call the COVID-19 weapons, nor did AstraZeneca, nor did Johnson and Johnson or Novartis. They were developed by the United States Department of Defense over many years, and the patents, as David Martin and others, Karen Kingston, have shown, go back to at least 2011. Uh, and Robert Malone was right in there making these bioweapons, always has been. We're talking about something that was designed to depopulate and to kill. And because of those, quote, vaccines, which are in fact gene therapies and worse, the population replacement rate of every vaccinated country in the world has now fallen below the number 2.1 live births per 100,000 women, the number necessary to replace the population. The population is crashing. The eggs that women carry, and you don't get any more after they're created in the womb and you're born, you don't get any more eggs. The eggs that women carry in their ovaries are being destroyed at a tremendous rate,
yeah.
as was shown by Dr. James Thorpe in Ron Johnson's hearing last week before the U.S. Congress, when these vaccines, which were supposedly safe and effective for women in their pregnancy, when these vaccines were given to women in their first trimester, even though pregnant women were excluded from the clinical trials, such as they were, when they're given to women in their first trimester, the fetal loss, the number of pregnancies lost is 83%, which is the same as a chemical abortifactant. So these vaccines are chemical abortifactants. They are also fertility destroyers. They destroy the fertility of men and of women. They destroy a vast array of functions in the body. What can you do about it?
Mm.
No one is sure. There's a lot of information that's out there about nicotine patches and about NAC for the graphene oxide and dandelion tea and white pine needle tea and so on. And who knows? But we're not dealing with one substance causing one kind of disorder. We're dealing with filthy substances, the nature of the batches of which has changed. So, in order to deal with that, let me share my screen. I am the chief scientist, chief medical advisor, I should say, for a company that markets nanosoma. The company is called Magic Dicol.
Okay.
Nanosoma is a natural product, a nutrient, which has signaling molecules derived from natural sources in a spray or a gel or a cream. And nanosoma is among the class of compounds called adaptogens, which means it tells the body what to do to make things right. Whoops, I don't know why that went away. If the body needs more of something, nanosoma or another adaptogen will say make more of that. If it needs less of something, it will say make less of that. It's a dialogue with the genetic capacity of the body. It changes no genes, but it speaks to the genes and gives the genes information that they need. Nanosoma is a patented compound. I have seen nanosoma help people in a vast array of consequences and conditions and diseases and so on. And so I proposed to Magic Dicole, why don't we do a clinical study? Why don't we ask people if they have vaccine injury issues or if they have shedding injuries, in other words, direct or indirect injuries from these bioweapons. Let's do a clinical study. Let's ask people to sign up, and you can fill in a site and you can read the informed consent. And so here's the information about me. I'm the principal investigator of the study. And you can become part of a 2-week study. You'll get 4 vials that look like that, except they don't have the labeling on it. And you won't know whether you're getting a placebo or whether you're getting the actual material. And you'll spray 5 sprays a day every 5 hours. I'm sorry, every 4 hours, 5 sprays a day, every 4 hours into your mouth. And you'll keep a log of your symptoms and the number of times you do that. At the end of that time, we will tell you whether you were on the placebo or whether you were on the active ingredient. And then we will send you a month's supply of the active ingredient as a thank you. No money is involved. This research will tell us what we need to know in terms of the precise data. Can we really reverse the damage of direct or indirect bioweapon poisoning? I I'm hopeful that we can, but we can't say that we can until we know that. The the link is trial.nanosoma.org. Trial.nanosoma.org. And when people sign up for the clinical trial, um, then I will set up an appointment with them. We have a 15 or 20-minute meeting. We talk about their questions and we decide whether this is a good procedure for them. I am very hopeful. I cannot tell you that I know for sure, otherwise, we wouldn't need to do the clinical trial. And so
Yeah.
I'll put that in the chat trial.nanosoma.org.
Okay. Trial.nanosoma.org. Okay.
We have
Good.
some spaces left in
Yeah.
the clinical trial.
Okay. And I want to talk to the listeners for just a second here. For those of you that joined us late, we are talking with Rima Laibow. She's a frontline doctor and she's talking about the problems, especially the problems that some people had to inject in their arm. Otherwise, they get fired or all kinds of nasty stuff will happen. And that stuff they injected into the body had one purpose from its creator, and that was to kill them. And they have failed at a lot of that. It didn't happen as fast as they wanted it to, but I saw a study on the internet. I think it was somebody out of believe it was Vietnam. There was a group of doctors got together and they added all up, and they globally there's 17 million people that have died from the vaccine. And
Elaborate that if I may.
yeah, please
Because
do. And that is just there. That is just what was reported. Not
Dennis
everything is
Rancourt,
reported.
oh, absolutely not. Dennis Rancourt is a physicist from Canada, and he and his research group did a study, a very careful study, a statistical analysis of the data. And what they showed was that the minimum number of people who have died directly from the non-vaccines, the alleged vaccines, the minimum number of people was 17 million. But possibly we were dealing with 100 million. Then
Yeah.
James Thorpe, who is an OBGYN, added in the reproductive loss, the number of babies that were killed in utero, and the number of women who became incapable of ever having babies, the number of women who were sterilized, and the number of men who were sterilized by the bioweapon vaccine. And he says we're dealing with somewhere between 100 million and 500 million people. So take your pick. The reliable, scientifically valid calculations that use very, very careful methods to look at the numbers worldwide are telling us that somewhere between
Yeah.
17 million, which is more than Hitler managed to kill, he only got 16 million, and 500 million, half a billion people, have so far either died or have been prevented from being born. Oh, that's rather a lot. I would say that we are right now in the middle of the world's most successful genocide. And we're either going to bury our heads in the sand like the ostriches that are under a death sentence in Canada. We can
Yeah.
talk about that. Or we say, oh, that's not happening. And we take action. And the action is with our Freedom Mouse. This is peaceful, lawful action. Don't take it and don't tell me later that you were on the side of life because inaction puts you on the side of death and destruction.
Yeah. If we go over the 500 million, then that is one out of 16 people in the world.
And their plans are for much more.
Yeah.
Understand, according to the World Holocaust Organization, also known as the World Health Organization, by the year 2030, you and I will be mandated to take all of the conventional vaccines, which are being put onto the mRNA platform, and 500 novel vaccines just invented, new ones, unstudied. Oh, joy. In other words, they will use vaccines and vaccines and vaccines and vaccines to destroy both the lives of most of the people of humanity and the DNA of the rest so that you become part of the Internet of Bodies through
Mhm.
biodigital convergence, which is what Casey Means, who wants to be Surgeon General, is so enthusiastic about.
Yeah. Wow. Uh, like I said, it's time for doing something.
Opposable thumbs,
Yep.
spiritual opposable thumbs. Do something.
Do something. Yeah. And what about? I'm hearing now that in Florida they have outlawed chemtrails. They made it a felony to
And,
spray over Florida.
and in Tennessee and in a number of other states. But the question is, what exactly does that mean? What are you going to do? Shoot down a plane that's chemtrailing? How is that enforced? Look, in New Zealand, the Maori people have absolute legal authority to bring justice and make things right and get rid of all of the oppressions. They have absolute legal right, and they have zero enforcement capability. So they have no right at all. So when Florida says yes, it's illegal. When Tennessee says yes, it's illegal. What does that mean exactly? Until there is enforcement capability, it's like, you know, painting a sign on your head that says, um, I don't have to use a driver's license.
Yeah, well, there's federal law that tells you that there is no unless you are in business.
So the
Yeah,
point is that we have to make this real. We
yeah,
can't just satisfy ourselves with symbolic actions. And indeed, Tennessee has passed another piece of legislation along with 9 other states that says no public money no public resources can be used for the implementation of any United Nations related program, whether it's Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, any of the programs, and no property rights can be abrogated. So the law's there. Now, is it being enforced? And the answer is nope, because the people have not said, this is my land. This is my country. This is my community. And they have not started unwinding the United Nations control of governance and education and property and air and water from every aspect.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to tell Congress to pass the disengaging entirely from the United Nations debacle Act of 2025 so that we can begin doing that. That's why it's so important to get Kennedy to withdraw all, pull out, unwind, and discard all of the hideous tentacles of WHO control
Yeah.
in the second largest agency of the United States, Health and Human Services.
Yeah, and we need to think forward on this one because we know where we are, we know where we've been, and if we don't do anything, we know where we are going to be, and
Well,
that's not.
your audience knows, but your audience has to take the responsibility to tell their friends
Yeah,
and their neighbors and their coworkers, and their friends and neighbors and coworkers would say, you're crazy, but they need to persist because nobody believes a new idea until they've heard it 6 times. And then on the seventh, they say it was their idea and they knew it all along. That's called marketing.
yeah, yeah. We need to do something here because otherwise we're going down the wrong path. But if if you were talking to someone that is absolutely have no knowledge of anything like this, how would you go about initiating a talk to explain to them?
Well, if they are open minded, then we can talk about facts. If they are closed minded and they can't hear anything, I would wish them peace and I would walk away because there are too many people who are willing to
Yeah,
hear. And I am not interested in banging my head against a stone wall. The information is all over the internet, the information is all over printed material. The information is right there with the turbo cancers and right there with people dying and right there with myocarditis. And now Kennedy has said we have to have an increased warning, an expanded warning label on the Pfizer shots, which are supposedly no longer going to be routinely recommended to pregnant women and no longer Pfizer and Moderna and no longer routinely recommended for healthy children, except when you read the CDC's fine print, what you see is that the decision making is shared, but the ultimate authority is with the doctor. Excuse me? Pardon me? What? What happened to informed consent, which is the law of the land? Oh, as long as people are expecting their doctors to be neutral, when their doctors are agents of the murdering state, then I, I don't know what to say to those people. You need to protect your body. You need to protect your child. You need to protect your rights. You need to protect your social institutions. You need to protect the constitutional rule of law, which, by the way, the United Nations directly conflicts with. If you have the
yeah,
UN, you have no US Constitution. If you have the US Constitution, you can't be a party to the UN. It's very
yeah,
simple.
absolutely. And another thing too, I would like to have you talk on, and that is that uh, the vaccine with all the nanoparticles in it, and how does that interact and how is it activated by 5G?
Oh, oh, yeah, that's a 12-hour discussion. Basically, in one sentence, 5G is a military weapon. It is not about communication. 5G actually slows down internet communication, phone communication, and reception. 5G is about individual identification for individual control. Now, if you've gotten something injected into your body with lipid nanoparticles and all kinds of plasmids and all kinds of horrible garbage and so on, and perhaps self-assembling nanotechnology, and the 5G interacts with the self-assembling nanotechnology, and the 5G can cause symptoms of, oh, I don't know, Marburg virus, or cause you to fall over dead like that, or do any number of other things, stop your heart. How do you know what exactly they're going to decide to do if any of that stuff is true? And if
Yeah,
it's not true, well, don't we need to know that it's not true?
yeah,
Um, if that has been injected into us, why are we allowing the control system, the operating arm of the system, to impact us? Why would we do that? The answer is because we believe we're powerless. So I would say to people, um, approximately 30,000 peer-reviewed studies show that 5G is disastrous for human, animal, and environmental health without the COVID thing. How about we get rid of it and install fiber optics to the premises instead, which is not dangerous? I don't know. Sounds like a good idea to me. How about we not have a grid that allows us to be identified and controlled? How about we not have self-driving cars that can be turned off at the wish of anybody else? How about we don't give our lives, our DNA, our biological control, our piezoelectric capacity to mine cryptocurrency for those who think they own us? How about we don't give that to the control oligarchs and the destructocrats? How about we say no? How about we get the United Nations, the operational arm of the death machine, out of our lives? I
yeah,
don't know. Sounds like a good idea to me. The vaccines, which are not vaccines, are part of the control grid. 5G is part of the control grid. Why in the world would you not push these people out of your lives? I don't get it.
yeah, yeah. And in fact, I don't care what people think about Putin. They've been lied to about that for a very long time. He was quoted in an interview. They asked him, "Why don't we go with 5G over here?" And he looked at the interviewer and he said, "We have no use for it. The only use I can see for that is that it is a weapon system."
Exactly. Exactly. And for a long time, he refused. He said the West is weakening itself with chemical food production and with vaccines, and he refused to vaccinate the Russian population. Now they're back to vaccines again. But then again, Putin is a confusing character because at the same time that he's done some really cool things. And he's supported organic agriculture for the entire country and so on and so on. Now they've got 5G vaccines that they're really cool with, and they've got their non 5G COVID vaccines, but also Putin
Yeah,
was one of the very early young world leader graduates of the World Economic Forum. He
yeah.
finished his training. He came back to Russia, and 6 months later, after perestroika, he was the head of state. How exactly does that work?
They keep it in the family, don't they? But on the other hand, I think also, oh yeah, this is a good one. I somewhere on my computer, I have a document from an insurance company explaining what they are paying doctors to
Oh,
inject people. The most they can get from an insurance company for each one is about $350 per injection.
pediatricians are paid a bonus
Yeah,
by companies like Merck, and it's thousands of dollars per patient in their panel if 65% are fully vaccinated.
really? Okay.
Since more than half of the income of the average pediatrician comes from vaccines, pus and poison injected into children,
Hmm.
and all of the repeat business that the pediatrician gets by the chronic diseases that are created by having the pus and poison injected. All of the repeat business is generated by the vaccines. Vaccines are a cash cow par excellence. So they get paid to inject the vaccines. They get paid a bonus if they inject a lot of vaccines, and then they get all the business that flows back from continuing to treat the things that the vaccines cause. What a business model!
Yeah.
Whee!
Yeah, then boy, oh boy, they upped the numbers since the paper that I had. If it's that much, that is amazing. I can see why the people will sell their patients, or doctors will sell their patients
It's
down the
exact
river.
it's exactly what Bibi Netanyahu did. For undisclosed private emoluments, the
Yeah,
Prime Minister of Israel sold the entire population of Israel to Pfizer for experimentation. And they are a heavily, heavily vaccinated, COVID vaccinated population. And the vaccinated children die, according to Israeli Health Department statistics, 151 times, not 151%, 151 times more frequently than unvaccinated children,
yeah,
children who have not received the COVID shots. 151 children die from the COVID shots for every one child who dies without the COVID shots. That's what we're up against. We're up against leaders who are globalist puppets and are willing to see us die unless we do something about it.
yeah, because Israel was one of the first countries to have the whole country vaccinated, and they're some of the worst off right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the relationship of all-cause mortality and horrible previously unknown conditions in young people is exactly the same for linear slope as the rate of injection with these death machines. These are
Mm.
bioweapons. They are bioweapons brought to you under the guise of vaccines. All vaccines are bad enough. These are bioweapons designed to maim and kill. We are in a genocide now. And frankly, somebody who looks around and says, what genocide? I don't see no genocide. You see a genocide? Don't see no genocide here. I'm not even going to talk to them.
Yeah, yeah. And just to give the listeners an idea of the mind behind, I remember reading a couple of years ago now, I think there was three or four African countries that said, nah, we're not going to participate. Five, okay. They didn't want to participate. All those presidents of those countries are dead.
One of them, now, Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, was a pretty horrible dude. And I have very little good to say about Mugabe. But Mugabe did say that these tests are so accurate, these PCR tests. So he had a goat and a
Yeah,
mango and a papaya tested, and they all came out positive. PCR, they all had, the goat had COVID, the mango had COVID, the papaya had COVID. In other words, he showed they were absurd. All five presidents who said, not so much, not going to do that in my country, were offed.
yeah. Man, that's amazing. And I think this is also a little old information that I remember, and that I think there's three countries beyond those. I think there's still an African country that hasn't done anything with it, but Cuba never had it, and North Korea,
Then we
and
get
Russia. Biggest part of Russia has no
Russia now, 5G. Are we talking about 5G or are we talking because
5G.
the African countries are very, very, very lightly jabbed with the COVID
Oh,
uh, bioweapon. And of course, they've had very little COVID because things have people have to understand that vaccines select for the disease. We have
Yeah.
been taught that vaccines prevent diseases, but they don't. They select for the diseases. There was a an epidemiologist from the University of Pennsylvania named Professor Andrew Maniotis, and he said, "Wouldn't it be cool if we could predict where outbreaks, epidemics, and pandemics were going to occur? That would be nice." And so he started looking at outbreaks, epidemics, and pandemics. And he discovered something very interesting. And he published a three-part paper, and we republished it, and we interviewed him. Very, very interesting guy. And he said, you know what? Wherever there is a vaccine program, that's where the outbreak will be. If it's a bigger vaccination program, that's where the epidemic will be. And if it's a really big vaccination program, that's where the pandemic will be. The vaccine selects the disease.
Yeah. That's where you're going to make the money.
This is before the mRNA platform.
Yeah.
Okay. All vaccines are basically the injection of pus and poison, fraudulently marketed as a health promotion strategy, which are in fact a disease promotion strategy, which means a profit strategy. And the mRNA vaccines kick it up a notch because they're a bioweapon.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, we got 5 minutes left, but I would like to have you talk a little bit about what you do. You do consultations on the phone with
I
people,
do.
and
Well,
also you
Zoom.
have things on your website that people can get. Speak on that for a little bit.
In 2004, my husband and I closed our medical practice. We had two offices in the New York City metropolitan area. And those were offices where people could come and did come from all over the world when allopathic medicine hadn't worked for them. The phraseology, Augie, is very interesting. In medicine, it is said that the patient fails the therapy. So people were told there's no hope, there's nothing more we can do, go home and die, live with the pain, it's intractable,
Yeah.
incurable. And then they start looking for a doctor like me who looks at things a little differently.
Yeah.
And people would come and I would say, okay, let's look at, I can't take that call right now. And they would say, there's nothing that can be done. Can you help me? And generally, yes, we could restore them to vibrant health without the use of any pharmaceuticals.
Mhm.
Um, and so in 2004, my husband, Major General Albert N. Stubblebine, and I closed that practice of medicine to take on the global um, depopulation and enslavement agenda that we're talking about today. How did we know? It wasn't because we were psychic, it was because we could read. We read their documents and they said very clearly what they were going to do and how they were putting it in place and how the governments were working with them. So we created the Natural Solutions Foundation. But at the same time, I'm still a doctor, and people call me or they reach out to me by email and they say, can you help me? Or can you give me a second opinion? Do I have any other options? Can you help me make sense of this? What can I do? So, my practice is a telemedicine practice in which if the person wants me to become involved in their healthcare as a consultant, I will do that. I'm obviously not running an office, so people can't come to me and get their blood pressure taken and so on and so on. So I work in a consultative way, and we use Zoom like you and I are using. And then we work together either one time if that's all that's necessary or on an ongoing basis because there's a tremendous amount that can be done using that opportunity. Now, I do not accept any insurance whatsoever because no clerk is going to tell the patient or me what's medically necessary. That's a decision between the patient and me.
Yeah.
And and generally people are very happy with what I can offer them. And it's my pleasure to do so. So I ask people to send me an email to RELEYES 3, that's my initials, REL, plus the word eyes, because it's for my eyes, and the number 3 at gmail.com, RELEYES3 at gmail.com. And they can tell me it's sent, use consult as the subject, and we can see whether that's an appropriate thing to do. There are some products that I make available that I think are enormously helpful to people. One of them is nanosoma. Another one is nanosilver, which is incredibly useful for supporting the function of the immune system. And then there are some patches using very no medication, but information patches that are put on the skin that speak directly to the brain and say, hey, fix this up. And the brain says, oh, right, and restores homeostasis. So that's pretty cool. These are non-pharmaceutical interventions. If people want to know what I know, they can do that. I have a Substack called Dr. Rima Truth Reports.substack.com. I recently was diagnosed. I'm 81 years old, Augie, and I recently was diagnosed with age-related macular degeneration. And I said, okay, I know how to cure that. I've helped lots of people with taurine IVs and oral nutrients and so on. So we'll take care of that. And I gave people my nutritional regimen. Use it, don't use it. If it's helpful to you, God bless. If it's not, God bless. It's okay. So I make a huge amount of information available
Yeah.
to people. And they can go online and find my Substack. And I hope they'll subscribe because I also use that as my newsletter. That's Dr. Dr. Rima, Rima, truthreports.substack.com. So I make a lot of things available. And if people need a more intensive, personalized communication, that's what those consultations are for. And they're very, very effective as a
Yeah.
way of helping people because after all, you're the world's greatest expert on you. I can be an assistant, but it's you who have your health in your own hands and
Yeah.
need to know what to do with it.
Yeah. Well, this has been interesting. I know that I have been known to give doctors a really bad rap, but I want to say this, and that is that there's a purpose. If I break my leg, I'm going to go see one. The herbalist can go jump off a bridge somewhere. I don't care. I want to go to the to the hospital and find a doctor. So yes, when it comes to emergency medicine, they can do wonderful
Right.
things.
Emergency room, surgery suite, ICU. That's where pharmaceuticals have their place. That's where active medical intervention have their place. But that's not what most people spend their lives contending with.
Yeah,
And so, in my view, the pharmaceuticals are not only irrelevant but harmful outside of the ER, the surgical suite, and the
yeah,
ICU. Now, I went to see an ophthalmologist because I needed a new prescription, right? I
good.
can't make that up. And I didn't go to a homeopath to get an eye prescription. I went to an ophthalmologist. And while he was doing the eye exam, he said, oh, look at that. You've got age related macular degeneration. And I said, okay, what do you know about taurine IVs to make it go away? And what do you know about red light to make it go away? And he said, nothing. I said, okay, I'll be back in 6 months and I'll show you. Okay. And he will either say, oh, well, I guess you didn't have macular degeneration after all, or he'll say, wow, tell me more. That depends on his moral compass.
That's the kind of doctor you want to hear about, the one that says, "Tell me more."
But I don't know whether he is that. We'll find out in July.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. This has
My
been
pleasure.
really interesting.
Thank you,
Uh,
Augie.
and yeah, and I am about to run out of some of that colloidal or that
Nano
nano silver.
nano silver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be calling you on that shortly. So, okay, anyway, and for those of you out there that is watching this, watch for the next one coming up. We're going to have some more interesting stuff for you. And until then, be good to each other.